Hello, in this lab we will be working on continuous integration using Azure pipeline in Azure DevOps. Now, what is continuous integration? So, we will be continuously automatically integrating our code present in one branch of a repository to the other branch of repository. It is something like we have employees in our company, and some changes are made by employee in one branch. So, I want those changes to be reflected in other branch. So we will be using Azure pipeline to make those changing committed in the another branch or another repository. So that's why we will use Azure pipeline. So it is also written here. Azure pipeline is Azure. It is this service is provided by Azure DevOps for continuous integration and continuous deployment. Means first it will be integrating the previous code and then deploying that. So there are two types of pipeline provided in the Azure pipeline, which are build pipeline and release pipeline. So what are build pipelines and release pipeline? Build pipeline focuses on continuous integration of source code, while release pipeline focus on continuous deployment. So integration means I am integrating some code, and deployment means I am deploying some code at some phase. Means I have to deploy some test code and test that code, while integrating is something like I am integrating some previous version of code and some new added version of code added by some employee. So that is continuous integration. But this continuous deployment can also be provided using build pipeline. Means build pipeline also perform work of continuous deployment, but uh, but up to some extent. Mean development and test environment we can do that is small part of code. But if we have to do a production deployment, then release pipeline work better. Means a large area of code, then release pipeline will be a better option. So there are two main steps in continuous integration. So in this lab, we will be doing build pipeline purpose, means continuously integrating our resources present in one branch to the other branch. So, but there are two main pillars in the continuous integration, which are build code and testing code. So build code means we have to convert our code into artifact using build pipeline, and then in test code, what does continuous testing and code testing means? It means checking the quality of our code, means letting the merge clean and safe code into our repository. That is, we will perform a merge clean. Means when we join our code, the code should be clean and safe code will be merged into the repository. That is code quality and code testing checking that can be performed by application like Sonar Gold that detect bugs and vulnerability. So before merging any code, it will check for all these things. So for continuous integration, these are the two process, that is build pipeline connect to a code repository, and that code will be that code will be converted into packages, that is build artifact, and from this stage build artifact are consumed in continuous delivery portion of the development cycle, means sent to the continuous delivery these packages for the deployment. So these are the two main pillar of the build process. So in this lab also we will be doing some similar type of task, that is we will be assigning build pipeline some number of tasks which build pipeline has to do. So it will for example, we have assigned a task to copy files from one branch to another branch. So it will grab source code and from that branch and package it into an artifact, and here we have to mention all these things, and ready for release to pipeline to consume. That we will be seeing in later. That is, it will pick code from one branch and convert it into an artifact, and then it is sent to pipeline for continuous for deployment of that task. So now we will go into the detailed discussion of this lab as we have get a familiarity. So before going ahead, first we will take a review. So first we will be initializing a local Git repository, which we can see in the second point. We will be initializing a local Git repository and pushing it into the Azure repository. Means there is some content present in the local Git repository, then we will push that content into the Azure repository. Then we will use classical editor to build to define and build a pipeline. Means we will not be using YML and something codes to build a pipeline. We will be using classical editor where we will be selecting the option, that is who is the source, where is the target. So we will be using classical editor to build a pipeline. Then we will be running a manual build process, means to check if the pipeline is created, we will run an automatically manual process. Then we will create a pull request, trigger pull request, that is in one branch there is some file stored, and um, we have to store those files in some other branch. So we will be creating a pull request, that is pull request is sent by one branch. So those pull requests will be picked up by our pipeline, and those changes will be committed in the another branch. That is, there are two branches, feature branch and master branch, and there is some file present in the feature branch. So a pull request has come, so pipeline will pick that pull request and mm, save that file in the master branch. So that will be the objective of this lab. So we have get an overview of what we will be doing. So now this is our first task, that is we have to push our local Git repository content to the Azure DevOps. So first we have opened the terminal, and then we have set the global configuration of the Git. So what we are doing here, we will be setting a configuration to access the Git repository content in the Azure DevOps. So we have created a user Cloud Academy and created a password for that, so that we can access the Git repository in Azure development environment. Means we have created the username and password in terminal here, and through that username and password I can get that repository in the Azure development environment. So for that uh, we have add those changes and commit those changes in the Git branch, so that I can access those that repository in the Azure development environment. And when I paste that link, this link is provided by that. So when I paste that link in a new tab, I will be prompted for the username and password which I have set earlier. So I will have to paste that username and password to access that Git repository in Azure development environment. Now our that repository I can access in the Azure development environment, which is present in the Git. Now in terminal, I will push local branch into the Azure development environment, so that I can access that local branch in Azure development environment and provide the username and password. So now I can see this repository in my Azure development environment. So our first and repository contain means files and other things which are present in the GitHub folder of local branch. So this is our first step, that is we have successfully initialized a local directory Git repository into a remote repository in Azure development environment, Azure repository. So now we have to build a pipeline using classical editor. So here we will not be using the YML code to build the pipeline. We will be creating using the manual, using the classical editor. Means we have to select the option. So like this, we will click on create pipeline and use the classical editor. And from here we will select the source, team project, and repository. Means which is the repository and which branch we will using CA projects. And then we will fill in the pipeline information. Means what is the name of the pipeline, CA project, continuous integration, and default. Now we will be assigning task. What is the task performed by this pipeline, means what this pipeline will be doing. So first task, it will be copying files from one directory. So this task we have assigned, it has copied file from the source directory we have provided. And this target means it is taking that code from the directory from which I have copied to a staging area, means to make a artifact, as we have discussed earlier. First it will copy code from repository and convert it into an artifact. So this task is sending it to the target staging area. Now first task is completed. Now our second task is to publish this artifact into the uh, next directory. So here we will use publish build artifact. Means we will assign another task, and it will take artifact from the staging area, from where the artifact are stored. Where here we can say in the copy file, target folder is this. Means the code is converted into artifact which is stored in this folder. And now publish build artifact, take artifact from this location and drop the artifact into the desired location. So we have added the trigger to know that the work is completely working fine. And options, we have from option we have selected the markdown link, so that we can use this pipeline to perform a job. That is, while we are integrating, we will be pasting this markdown link so that it can refer to this pipeline, and then we will save the changes. So we have created our build pipeline using classical editor. Now we have copied this markdown link which we will be using while we create a feature branch. so that our code from feature branch will be copied into the master branch. So for that purpose it will be useful. So now we will go to our next step. We will first run a manual build process. Here we will directly go to pipeline and select our pipeline and run pipeline. It will check if our pipeline is created or not, but it is not recommended, as it is means simple run. The more advanced run is the more advanced run is when we run against a feature branch to test if code will be built, means copied from feature branch to master branch. So the next step is to perform that run. So here also we can say that it has copied the artifact from staging directory ready to be packed, then pack that artifact and publish to the Azure pipeline. So it will be the task. First it will be copy from staging directory, then packed it as an artifact and publish it to the Azure pipeline. So here we can say that the default run has been done. Now we will create a feature branch and copy content from the feature branch to the uh, master branch. So here first we know that in the current branch we are in. So if we click on git branch, we will get that we are in the this branch. Then create a new branch which is feature branch, and check out from the feature branch. So if now check our branch, that will be our feature branch. Now we will create a file here in car repository, new file, and name that file as readme.md. And here we will paste the build repository link. So that will be initiated, means it will send a pull request. So that pull request will be sent whenever this code will be the changes are made in any of the file in this feature branch. So this readme.file will be changed, and then we edit this branch using git add and check the status and commit all the changes in this and run the git changes and push that branch into the git repository, that is git push origin feature branch. And if prompted हमने means we have sent the username and password. Now we go back to the Azure repository, then we can see that if we can change the master branch to the feature branch, and there we can see that there is one file mreadme.md which we have created now. So now we have added the trigger for this feature branch. That is, we will click on this feature branch and click on three dots to add a branch policy. Means whenever any change is made, then it will automatically trigger, so that it will be sent to the master branch. So we will save these changes. So in this left side we have created a new branch and submit to change repository and created a pull request build policy. Means it will pull request whenever changes are made, so that we have made in the build policy, and on the build pipeline to trigger the pipeline whenever pull request is approved. So we have to click on approve pull request, then and then only it will be sent to the master branch. So now we will test that our pull requests are working fine. So we created a new pull request and in the feature branch, and here we have added the new pull request, and here we have to add the reviewer, but for this lab purpose we have added the administrator. But who are the user who is performing this task, they are to be added as. And then we will create this pull request, and for this lab purpose we are approving this pull request, but it is not ideal. In real scenario it is means truly different. Means this means in real scenario this approval is only provided to limited number of users who are allowed to do or perform the approved request. So means head of a project management team who is merging the codes, that is allowed to perform or approve the request that is coming from one branch. Then but for this purpose we are approving this request, and then we will complete the pull request. And there are many options that complete associated work item after merging, or we have to delete feature branch after merging, so that we can set according to our need. And then we will click on complete merge, so that complete merge has been take place from the feature branch to the master branch. So now if we go back, navigate back to the pipeline, we will notice that build pipeline has created successfully. Means pipeline has created successfully and it is performing its task, that is merging content from the feature branch to the master branch. Now if we go back to the repository and click on master branch, then we can see that readme.md is copied here. We can see the changes merged and status badge has reflected the recent build pipeline. So we can see that we have perform the continuous integration using Azure pipeline in Azure DevOps. That is, first we have created a build pipeline, then triggered an automatic build against the master branch by approving a pull request to merge changes from your feature branch. So we have approved the request that is coming from the feature branch. So for that we have created a branch policy in the previous page, where we have mentioned whenever to trigger and accept pull request as trigger to build for the pipeline. So that's all for this lab. That is, we have used build pipeline for the continuous integration in Azure pipeline in Azure DevOps. And thank you.